This is the conclusion of Season 3, Episode 15 of my modular journey, and today we're taking a look at the Timiszoara voltage-controlled DSP effector. The Timiszoara, who I affectionately refer to as Timmy, is a voltage-controlled multi-effect signal processor featuring a full stereo signal path with 2 adjustable audio inputs, 2 audio outputs, and a voltage-controlled wet-dry mixer. Timi also has a micro SD card on the front panel that allows the user to load custom effects without any restrictions or copyright protection. I don't know what that means, but remember that for later. He also claims to be able to use many effects available on the internet and even create your own effects. This is part of why I purchased Timiszoara in the first place, extensibility. It has a crisp OLED screen and a single rotary clicky encoder for navigating and selecting banks and programs. By default, the screen shows the name of the current effect and the names of 3 editable parameters. Programs are organized into banks of 8, and if I'm reading this right, the number of banks is only limited to the size of the micro SD card. Effects can be selected using a CV in the scan or next jacks, with scan having a range of -5 volts to 8 volts, to scan backwards and forwards. Next is just a trigger to bump to the next one. The first 3 LED slider potentiometers act as levels for the 3 editable parameters, or attenuators when CV is used to edit the parameters. The far right slider controller is the mix between wet and dry, also with the CV jack to automate or modulate the mix externally. There is a left and right input jack with individual attenuators for controlling the level of input signal. I have a note in my script here to say this is what confused me initially. Both inputs are normal to each other, meaning left is normal to right, right is normal to left. And this normalization occurs before the input attenuators, so it is necessary to adjust both input attenuators even if there's only a left mono signal coming in. So what that looks like is if you put in a left only input, you still have to turn up the right attenuator. So that confused me at first, but I think I got it now. At the bottom, there is a left and right output for the processed signals. And finally, there is a signal clipping LED, which lights up when either the inputs or the outputs or the signal inside the CPU gets too hot. Another note is during distortion type effects, it is normal to see this LED chirping away continually. As far as why I chose Timiszoara, my first reason for selecting it is that it's a Chaos device. And if you can't tell, I absolutely love Chaos devices. Yes, I did go load all of my Chaos devices in this rack to be a show-off how much I love these modules. Every module of theirs I own so far is beyond the normal realm, and absolutely lovely sound comes out of them. I also needed another in-the-box DSP FX, especially now that I have the WMD performance mixer with sends, so having the Timiszoara seemed sensible. And because you can change, load, and create your own programs, that sounded amazing to me. I already am in love with FX8 and how I can select 32 effects of my own choosing and load them up at any time. And the thought of stepping that up by now creating my own effects and programs was too good to ignore. I definitely want to check that out. As for how I plan to use it, well, duh. It's going to be an effects module. It probably is going to be a part of an effects chain, similar to how usually I have disting going into Monsoon, or I have something else going into FX8, and that becomes a chain of effects. I'm probably going to do the same thing with Timiszoara. And while this was not meant to be part of this episode to begin with, I did order the Deva expansion module for Timiszoara. So we're going to talk about both of these today. What Deva is a feedback loop commander expansion module for Timiszoara. There's a little expansion connector here on the back of Deva that connects to the expansion jack on the back of Timiszoara. Deva requires no power. He sucks power from Timiszoara. So we're going to connect all that stuff up. And so with that, let's get them in the rack and powered up and start twiddling some knobs. All right, Timiszoara and his buddy Deva are in the rack. Before I start anything here, let's just look over to the left. I also, with Deva, I also just got Sophia, which is a transcendent waveform analog oscillator. They really have great names for their stuff, don't they? Chaos. And then I have the Odessa, which is actually something I've wanted for a very long time. This is a wavetable spectrum harmonic cluster oscillator. And they're both really big. 24 HP, these are huge. And then, of course, my old stuff I've had for years, Belgrade, Batumi, Zagreb, Tallinn, and now. So this is my XAOC Devices collection so far. These two oscillators were meant to be the end of the year purchase for me for next year. All right, let me get some power going. For the audio portion of this, I think I'm just going to make noise. I'm not going to go through every single one. There's hundreds. I think there's 175 of them. But what I am going to do is go into a couple of folders and pick out some of my favorites and just hear what they sound like. So in order to hear what they sound like, I guess I need a sound. So I'm going to use this chain from plates over here, which starts with Pamela's, as always. Pamela's into Ornament and Crime envelope, and then left and right out into... Level out, Pamela! Let me come out of... Timmy! I gotta stop doing that. That's obnoxious. All right, so I'm back at the point where I have the stereo audio coming out into Timiszoara, left and right. I have the left and right out to my DAW, the outs module over here. Turn on the clock, and we start getting some plucks. And I'm going to turn up the input attenuators a little bit more. So one of the first things that comes up is Bank 1, Program 1, which is a 3-phase chorus effect. If I bring up the mix so you can actually hear it, and then you can see here, maybe you can see on this camera, there's a speed 1, speed 2, and a depth. So these 3 sliders are the 3 editable parameters for the effect that's loaded currently, and then this is the wet-dry mix. All right, I had to go make a bunch of changes to Pamela's because this is a chorus effect. I want you to be able to actually hear the chorus. I'll crank the depth all the way up and the mix all the way up. So that's the chorus bank. If I hold this button down, the encoder, I get out here to this folder menu, and this is the other navigation part to talk about. So there's a whole lot of folders, and each one of these folders has 8 effects in them. Here's a delay reverb. Let me set some of these up that I think I'm gonna like anyway. Reverb size. So let's get our sound here. And now I'm gonna bring in the mix. So you hear how the left channel is the delay and the right channel is the reverb. If I turn off this attenuator, you no longer get reverb. An assumption I can make is that eurorack or modular is supposed to be monophonic generally, so you would probably pipe these out to mono channels and pan them where you want them. And maybe that's where the effect comes back to life. I mean, it doesn't sound terrible to the ear, but the reverb is definitely only on one side and the delay is only on the other side. So here's a chorus and a reverb. Same. Pretty left and righty. Chorus and a phaser. Deconstruct, I believe, is where we're ripping our sound apart. Let's listen to just a couple of these. So these are, at least to my ears, they're really cool effects. And you can get them to really go crazy. Crank disorder all the way up, for instance. It's probably good to mention at this point that this is still just Timiszoara. I have not engaged anything in Deva. The levels are down to nothing. Bloodshed. Use LFOs to modulate things, right? So even without a signal, huh? Well, that's kind of interesting. I have no signal coming into Timiszoara, but it still has something to chew on anyway. Self-oscillation. See, that could be a cool effect in the background, right? All right, let's move on. Let's see what's next. Delay mono, I'm going to just avoid that because I'm not a fan of mono. Let's go over here to delay stereo. And here's a ping pong filter. So I have to set my time up kind of slow, set my feedback up just a little bit. This is like a filtering, low and high here. Let's mix it in. And so here is a ping pong multi-tap. Pitch up delay. And this slider now controls how much you want that to pitch up. Or how fast you want it to go. So it can have some interesting effects. So since there are so many banks, I have not gone through all of these myself. I don't know that I want to in this video. So let's just try a couple more. So here's the dry, this is something called wah fuzz. So that's pretty cool. I like that. Let's see, let's hop on down to, we all know what flangers sound like. Let's listen to glitches and granulars, and then maybe we'll call this a day. All right, so let's listen to one that's called Random 1. So the chance of glitch, the buffer, bring it up, and how much to mod it by. Glitching. See what Random 2 does. I like that one. That's more out on the stereo field. Yeah, I could see using the glitch programs a lot. I could see using this one a lot. Oh, reverse. One of my favorite things in the world is reverse effects. All right, what else we got in here? A modem. All right. All right, the last one I'm going to look at today is Granular, because who doesn't love Granular? So as with most, the higher the wet mix is, the less of the raw signal you're going to hear, which to me, this is how I use a lot of effects. Nice. So let's listen to a multi-band Granular. So here, this will be interesting. Let's do our LFO into... Why are these so short all of a sudden? Let's do an LFO into split frequency. So see, this is the area of Timiszoara that I would probably live in the most, is in Granular and Glitch and anything that's a true stereo effect. All right, it's only 4 o'clock in the morning here in my dark studio. It's kind of creeping me out a little bit. So this is kind of interesting. I thought I'd try the scanning because I've never done it before. So I took a gate out of Pamela's down here to data. So it's kind of going between 2 volts and 4.5 volts, roughly. And it's not actually changing the GUI, but when the gate goes high, it seems to be changing what granular effect I have selected. So I don't recall that from the manual where it says it won't change the display. So what I'd like to see now is not just a minimum to maximum. Let's go over to the wave shape and see if we can get it to be randomish. All right, so I guess now you hear Pamela's is putting out voltages between 0 and 5 volts into scan, which is apparently changing the granular selections because I'm in the granular folder. So I guess that's kind of neat. I can have evolving effects based on wherever my sliders are set, or I could also send modulation in for these positions. So if I sent precise voltage into here, I can actually have each time Pamela's changes, these parameters would change to something like maybe a sequencer could send a precise voltage to change when Pamela's ticks over. This is all the advanced modular stuff that I want to get into in the next year, because I've been just screwing around with very superficial stuff for a very long time. I want to get deep, and precision voltages and controlling things like this is a perfect example. Control how my effects are with a sequencer versus having to come here and touch things myself. But anyway, to demonstrate a couple of advantages of having the Deva expander with Timiszoara, let me put a big fat disclaimer out here that I just got this 2 days ago. And aside from reading the manual, there's like 2 or 3 videos on the entire YouTubes about Deva, and they were all about the announcement at Superbooth. Nobody actually showed how to really use it. What I'm going to show you is very, very basic. So be warned, I have no idea what I'm doing, but we're going forward anyway, because, you know, that's how we roll here on the VMG Fly by the seat of our pants. And right now, this is just Timiszoara. There's nothing patched in here at all. This is all just internal. So what I understand is going on with Deva is there's a connector between Deva and Timiszoara that allows this to just be an expander. There's no power plug-in for Deva. It's getting its power from Timiszoara. And so here you have some kind of little plucky thing I got going on. If I start raising the levels of left and right here, you can hear more pluckies. And what it's really doing is it's just raising the amount of delay. I have a ping pong filtered delay here, and here is your feedback. But the things I have noticed are things like this. These 2 outer sliders are treble and bass, it seems. So I think what that's doing, if I understand the manual correctly, it's what is being used as the signal for the feedback, whether it's filtered to a more highs or more lows down here. So you can hear the higher frequencies of the pluckiness is being fed back here. And the other thing I understand is that it's only the wet signal from Timiszoara that's being sent to Deva. So even if I did turn this up and turn down the mix on Timiszoara, I won't get any feedback. So you can bring this in slowly if you wanted to. So another way to bring it in slowly is to use LFOs. So I have here just 2 slow LFOs coming out of Batumi, and I'm going to plug them into level CV here for left and level CV for right. I'm going to speed them up just a little to start with so you can hear the differences between left and right. Now our attenuators are turned all the way down, so let's give them a 9 o'clock here. So you can kind of hear what I was doing manually is now, of course, being done with the LFOs. And these become, of course, offset attenuators, so if I bring them up higher, you get more of an effect. So where things start going really nuts is if you slow down this LFO that is already moving things up and down. You can see here on data, right? This is the left and right CVs. If I slow this down, meaning I give the signal more time at its peak, the feedback becomes really nuts pretty quickly. But you know, feedback might be your thing. Deva also has a send and a return path for both left and right, or channel 1 and 2. If I send this signal that I'm generating out to, let's say, FX8, my reverb tank over here, and then I return that signal from FX8, also left and right, Now that I have patched left and right to ascend and return, and I have LFOs raising and lowering the signal, and I already have a filtered ping pong coming out of Timiszoara, I am now going to add a reverb effect that is in the feedback loop. You hear that feedbacky sound coming and going. And the reason it's coming and going is because I have a CV into the level pots here. I have a CV into level and it's running very slow and kind of minimal. Minimal peaks here in out of Batumi. Sine wave. So as long as the LFO is rising and falling relatively quickly, you won't get stuck in that feedback circuit, and then slow it down so it stays at the peak a little longer. I'm just asking for it, aren't I? So then another interesting thing about Deva is this timer slider here in the middle. This is the clock rate. If you switch it over to the variable side, which I have it in already, this slider, I believe, starts helping with the amount of time in the delay factor of Timiszoara, because it has only, I think, a maximum of 1 second delay in Timiszoara, but you can use this to now make it longer. Let me push it up all the way. So there's also these phase switches, which I can't really see what they do visually. I can hear them audibly. That sounds so dirty. So I think the last thing I'm going to talk about Deva for today is probably this slider again, the timer slider. If you slam it all the way down, it changes the tone, gives it a lot more grittier tone to the signal. They say like a lo-fi. So the lower you make it, the more grittier it sounds. Which in itself, I guess, could have an interesting effect. So all in all, it's kind of a badass little expansion unit. It does a whole lot of stuff, and just the fact that you can send to an entire chain of effects, which could include compressors and distortion and flangers and more delays and more reverbs and choruses. You could send whatever's going on in Timi out to this entire chain of effects and then bring them back in and then generate some feedbacky tones based on that signal path, which is kind of cool. But in the end, this is kind of the thing I like right here. Is coming up and then hearing that little bit of reverb. What I would probably do with this myself after that is probably put it through another reverb, something that washes the whole thing together. Let's try it. What do you say? Let me take the left and right out of here into my Monsoon. And grab another left and right out of Monsoon now. So we don't want it to be too hot. Now if I raise Monsoon's reverb setting up pretty high. Now I've got the filtered ping pong delay effect being sent to FX Aids reverb, which is then being built into this big feedback and then sent back in to the signal path of Timiszoara and then sent to my Monsoon for a nice big washy reverb. So, yeah, I guess I could kind of see that being a little musical. Oof. There's that crackling. All right, that's about enough of this. So this sounds like a great place to end things. Alright, so that's it for episode 15 of my modular journey. It is also it for season 3. Holy smokes, it has been 3 years that I've been doing this. You'd think I'd know something by now. Anyway, this is it for episode 15 of my modular journey, featuring the Timiszoara voltage-controlled DSP effector and his partner in crime, the Deva feedback loop commander. I want to wish everybody a happy holiday season, whether you celebrate or don't, and a very happy New Year's. We'll see you in 2024.